The kitchen knife clattered to the marble floor as Mama Adunni stood frozen in the doorway, her eyes locked on the naked bodies, writhing on her son's matrimonial bed. Her daughter-in-law Kemi was straddling their cook, Tund, moaning his name with the same lips that had kissed her son Dayo goodbye that morning. If you think this story is already shocking, wait until you hear what this mother-in-law does next. Make sure to like this video and subscribe, because this revenge story will blow your mind. The pepper soup ingredients scattered across the pristine kitchen floor as Mama Adunni's hands trembled uncontrollably. She had driven from her Victoria Island home to Ikeja at noon, planning to surprise her son's family with their favorite meal. The spare key Dayo had given her 6 months ago felt heavy in her palm as she'd unlocked the front door, calling out cheerful greetings to what she thought was an empty house. The silence should have been her first warning. The housemaid, Blessing, was supposed to be cleaning. Little Timmy should have been having her afternoon nap. Instead, the house felt charged with an electric tension that made her skin crawl. She followed the sounds upstairs, sounds that her 60 years of life experience told her were intimate, passionate, and completely wrong in this context. Her designer handbag from her textile business had felt like a weapon in her grip as she climbed the stairs, each step bringing her closer to a truth that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her family. Now, witnessing her worst nightmare unfolding in the bedroom she'd helped Dayo decorate for his wedding, Mama Adunni felt something dark and primal stirring her chest. This wasn't just adultery. This was desecration of everything sacred about marriage, family, and respect. Kemi's long braids whipped around her shoulders as she moved on top of Tund, their bodies glistening with sweat in the afternoon sunlight, streaming through the expensive curtains Dayo had imported from Dubai. The cook, a man Mama Adunni had personally recommended to her son after he helped at her church events, was gripping Kemi's hips with calloused hands that should have been preparing meals, not defiling her son's wife. "Oh God, yes," Kemi gasped, throwing her head back in ecstasy. "You make me feel so alive, baby. So different from him." The words hit Mama Adunni like physical blows. Her son worked 16-hour days as a petroleum engineer at Shell Nigeria, often sleeping at the office during major projects. He sent money to Kemi's family in Osun State, paid for her younger brother's university education, and had just bought her a new Range Rover for her 20th birthday last month. This was how she showed her gratitude? "Tell me you love me," Kemi demanded, her voice breathy and desperate. "Tell me you'll never leave me like he does." "I love you, Kemi," Tund responded, his deep voice filled with passion that clearly wasn't just physical. "You're everything to me, everything he doesn't deserve." Mama Adunni's vision blurred with rage. This wasn't a momentary weakness or a single mistake. The familiarity between them, the way they moved together, the intimate conversation, this had been going on for months, maybe longer. She thought about little Timmy, probably at daycare while her mother destroyed her family. She thought about Dayo, who'd called just yesterday worried because Kemi seemed distant and uninterested in their marriage. He'd blamed himself, wondering if he was working too much, if he wasn't being romantic enough, if he was failing as a husband. The betrayal was layered like an onion, each revelation more painful than the last. But as Mama Adunni stood there, watching her son's life being torn apart by the woman he trusted most, something crystallized in her mind. This wouldn't end with a simple confrontation or tears or apologies. This required something more strategic, more devastating, more final. She began backing away slowly, her feet finding each step with careful precision. Her heart hammered against her ribs so loudly she was sure they could hear it, but the lovers were too consumed with their passion to notice anything beyond themselves. In the kitchen, she gathered the spilled ingredients with mechanical movements, her mind already racing ahead to phone calls that needed to be made, evidence that needed to be gathered, and plans that needed to be set in motion. The pepper soup would have to wait. She had much more important cooking to do. As she locked the front door behind her and walked to her Mercedes, Mama Adunni allowed herself one moment of pure, devastating grief for what this would do to her son. Then she straightened her shoulders, started the engine, and began planning the most thorough destruction of a human being she had ever contemplated. Kemi thought she was clever, carrying on her affair while Dayo worked to support their lavish lifestyle. She thought she was safe, protected by her mother-in-law's love and her husband's trust. She had no idea that she'd just declared war on a woman who'd survived 60 years in Lagos by never losing a battle that mattered. And nothing had ever mattered more than protecting her son. What do you think Mama Adunni should do? Should she tell her son immediately or plot her revenge? This is just the beginning of the most epic takedown you've ever heard. Drop your thoughts in the comments, smash the like button, and don't forget to hit that notification bell because you won't want to miss a single moment of this revenge saga. 3 days had passed since the discovery, and Mama Adunni moved through her daily routine like a woman possessed by purpose. She attended her Wednesday prayer meeting at the Redeemed Christian Church, managed inventory at her textile shop in Balaga Market, and smiled warmly at neighbors who stopped to chat about their grandchildren. But beneath her composed exterior, she was a volcano building pressure, each hour making her more dangerous. The hardest part was facing Dayo. Her 32-year-old son visited every evening after work, his tall frame folding into her favorite armchair like he was still the little boy who used to run to her with scraped knees and broken toys. But now he came with a different kind of wound, one that was bleeding him dry from the inside. "Mama, I don't know what to do about Kemi," he confided on Thursday evening, accepting the plate of pounded yam and a goosey soup she placed before him. His usually immaculate appearance was disheveled, his expensive shirt wrinkled, his eyes carrying the weight of a man who felt like he was failing at the most important job of his life. Mama Adunni stirred her tea with practiced calm, each rotation of the spoon buying her time to control the rage that threatened to spill over. She wanted to scream, to shake him, to force him to see what was happening right under his nose. Instead, she asked carefully, "What troubles you about your wife, my son? She's like a stranger living in our house." Dayo pushed food around his plate without eating, his appetite stolen by heartbreak he couldn't even name yet. "When I come home, she barely looks up from her phone. When I try to hold her, she finds excuses to pull away. Last night, I suggested we take Kemi to the beach this weekend, and she said she was too busy with her online boutique." Mama Adunni knew exactly what Kemi was busy with on weekends. According to the preliminary surveillance she'd already commissioned, Saturday afternoons were prime time for the lovers' trysts while Dayo caught up on paperwork at the office. "Have you tried romancing her?" Mama Adunni suggested, hating herself for the deception but knowing she needed more time. "Perhaps she feels taken for granted. I bought her diamond earrings last month. Took her to that expensive restaurant in Victoria Island she's always talking about. Arranged for Blessing to take Kemi overnight so we could have the house to ourselves." Dayo's voice cracked slightly. She spent the entire evening on her phone, said she had urgent business calls to make. The business calls were probably coordinating her next rendezvous with Tund. Mama Adunni had to bite her tongue to keep from saying something she'd regret. "Sometimes I think she never really loved me," Dayo continued, finally giving voice to the fear that had been eating at him for months. "Maybe she just married me for security, for the lifestyle I could provide. Her family was struggling when we met, and I was already established in my career." "Don't say such things," Mama Adunni replied, though part of her wondered if her son might be right. Kemi had been 24 when they married, fresh from university, with no job prospects and 3 younger siblings who needed school fees. Dayo had been 28, already climbing the corporate ladder at Shell, with a bright future and family money behind him. "I've been thinking about couples counseling," Dayo said quietly. "But every time I bring it up, she says we don't need strangers in our business. Very traditional, very Nigerian, she says." He laughed bitterly. Funny how traditional values only apply when it's convenient for her. After Dayo left that evening, Mama Adunni sat in her parlor staring at her phone for a full hour before making the calls that would change everything. The first was to her cousin Bola, who transitioned from police work to private investigations after retirement. The second was to her longtime lawyer, Mr. Okafor, who specialized in family law and had a reputation for protecting his clients' interests with ruthless efficiency. The third call was to a contact she'd never thought she'd need, someone who specialized in very discreet surveillance and evidence gathering. "I need everything," she told Bola during their meeting the next morning at her office above the textile shop. "Photos, videos, financial records, phone records, everything that will stand up in court." "How long has this been going on?" Bola asked, spreading surveillance equipment across the desk like a surgeon laying out instruments. I don't know, but I suspect months. Maybe longer. Mama Adunni's voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she signed the contracts. I need to know exactly when it started, how often they meet, whether money is changing hands, if there are others involved. I need to know everything. This kind of comprehensive surveillance isn't cheap, Adunni. We're talking about round-the-clock monitoring, multiple operatives, technical equipment. Money is not an object. Mama Adunni's textile business had been thriving for 15 years, and she'd invested wisely. I want them to have enough rope to hang themselves with. What about your son? When will you tell him? Mama Adunni stared out the window at the bustling Lagos traffic, watching people hurry about their daily lives, oblivious to the drama unfolding in her heart. When I have everything I need to protect him completely. Kemi is clever. If I expose her too early, she'll find ways to turn this around, make herself the victim, take Temi away from him. No, when I move, it will be decisive and final. That evening, as she prepared for bed in her empty house, Mama Adunni allowed herself to feel the full weight of what she was undertaking. She was about to systematically destroy her daughter-in-law, a woman she'd once welcomed into the family with genuine affection. But Kemi had made her choice when she decided to betray the man who loved her, and now Mama Adunni would make sure she faced the consequences. Mama Adunni is playing chess, while everyone else is playing checkers. But gathering evidence is just the beginning. Wait until you see what she does with it. Will her plan backfire and destroy her own son in the process? Keep watching to find out how this master manipulator brings down her cheating daughter-in-law. Don't forget to like and subscribe for more shocking family drama. The manila envelope felt heavier than it should have, weighted with the power to destroy lives and reshape futures. Mama Adunni spread its contents across her mahogany dining table with the solemnity of a judge reviewing death penalty evidence. 2 weeks of professional surveillance had yielded a harvest of betrayal so comprehensive it took her breath away. They meet almost every day between 1 p.m. and 4 p.m., Investigator Bola explained, her voice professional despite the explosive nature of the evidence. She pointed to a detailed timeline printed on official letterhead. She has a system. Sends the housemaid away with elaborate shopping lists that take hours to complete. Takes Temi to her sister's house for playdates. Then returns home to wait for him. The photographs were worse than Mama Adunni had imagined. Professional-grade images captured in stunning clarity. Kemi and Tund embracing by the pool, making love in the master bedroom, sharing intimate meals in the kitchen, even using Dayo's study for their encounters. The casual way they moved through her son's house like it belonged to them made her physically nauseous. This one is particularly damaging, Bola continued, sliding a series of photos across the table. Taken last Tuesday afternoon. She's wearing the diamond necklace your son bought her for their anniversary, while having sex with the cook on their matrimonial bed. Mama Adunni's hands shook as she examined the image. The necklace, a 200,000 naira piece Dayo had saved months to afford, glittered against Kemi's throat as she threw her head back in passion for another man. The symbolism was so cruel it felt intentional. The financial records are equally damning, Bola continued, producing bank statements with highlighted transactions. She's been withdrawing large amounts of cash from their joint account. 20,000 here, 50,000 there, always on the days she meets with him. The withdrawals started 6 months ago. She's paying him, Mama Adunni whispered, the pieces clicking together with sickening clarity. She's using my son's money to pay their cook to sleep with her. It gets worse. We tracked the payments. He's been depositing the cash into a separate account under his girlfriend's name, a woman named Funmi who lives in Mushin. Apparently, he's been telling her he has a wealthy benefactor who pays him for special services to the family. The layers of deception were staggering. Not only was Kemi betraying her husband, she was funding her lover's relationship with another woman. The cook was playing all sides, taking money from Kemi while maintaining a separate girlfriend who thought she was dating a successful entrepreneur. What about communication? Mama Adunni asked, though part of her dreaded the answer. Bola produced a thick folder of phone records and message transcripts. We couldn't access their phones directly, but we tracked their communication patterns through network data. Hundreds of calls and messages, often while your son is at work. They use WhatsApp mostly with code names. She calls him Chef, and he calls her Madam Beautiful. The pet names were somehow more infuriating than the physical betrayal. They had created their own intimate world, complete with inside jokes and romantic nicknames, all while living off Dayo's generosity. There's also this, Bola said carefully, producing a different kind of photograph. Taken 3 days ago at a hotel in Victoria Island. They weren't just having sex, they were planning. The image showed Kemi and Tund at a restaurant table, paper spread between them, deep in intense conversation. She was pointing at what looked like documents while he took notes. We couldn't get close enough to see what they were discussing, but the body language suggests serious planning. Financial planning, maybe even legal preparation. Mama Adunni felt ice in her veins. You think they're planning to leave together? Or planning to force your son out of the picture entirely? We've seen cases where the cheating spouse manufactures evidence of abuse or creates financial scandals to gain advantage in divorce proceedings. The fact that she's been systematically draining money from their account suggests she's preparing for something. Mama Adunni's phone buzzed with a text message. Kemi, Mama, can you watch little Temi tomorrow afternoon? Dayo and I need some alone time to work on our marriage. I'm planning something special to surprise him. The audacity was breathtaking. While secretly planning her husband's destruction, Kemi was asking her mother-in-law to babysit so she could have uninterrupted time with her lover. Mama Adunni typed back with steady fingers. Of course, my daughter. Bring her by at noon. I pray this special surprise brings you both the happiness you deserve. Every word was true, though not in the way Kemi would understand. The happiness she deserved was exactly what Mama Adunni planned to deliver. What's our next step? She asked Bola. We continue surveillance until we have enough evidence to survive any legal challenge. But there's something else you should consider. Your son will be devastated when he sees this. Some marriages survive infidelity, but this level of systematic betrayal, the financial fraud, the ongoing deception, this will destroy his ability to trust anyone. Mama Adunni gathered the photographs into neat stacks, her movements deliberate and controlled. My son is strong. He'll survive this and come out better for it. But first, we need to make sure Kemi can never hurt him again. What exactly are you planning? Complete exposure. I want every lie revealed, every betrayal documented, every manipulation exposed. When I'm finished with her, she'll have nothing left, no husband, no home, no reputation, no future. She chose to declare war on my family. Now she'll learn what happens when you underestimate a mother's love. The evidence is damning, but Mama Adunni's revenge plan is just beginning. What she's planning next will shock you to your core. This isn't just about catching a cheater, it's about total destruction. Hit that like button and stay tuned for the most shocking confrontation you've ever heard. Make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss what happens when this evidence is finally revealed. Little Timmy's laughter echoed through Mama Adunni's garden as she chased butterflies among the hibiscus flowers, her 4-year-old heart innocent and pure while the adult world around her prepared for war. Mama Adunni watched her granddaughter play, her heart breaking with the knowledge that this child's perfect world was about to shatter into a million pieces. "Grandmama, look," Timmy called out, holding up a bright red flower she'd picked. "It's beautiful like Mama's dress." "Yes, my angel, very beautiful," Mama Adunni replied, forcing a smile while death gripped her chest. How do you explain to a 4-year-old that her mother is a monster? How do you prepare an innocent child for the explosion that's about to tear her family apart? The irony wasn't lost on her. Kemi had dropped Timmy off with kisses and hugs, playing the devoted mother role perfectly. "Thank you so much, Mama. This means everything to Dayo and me. I really think today will change our marriage forever. Change it forever." The words had double meaning that only Mama Adunni understood. At exactly 2 p.m., her phone buzzed with confirmation from the surveillance team. They're together again. Pool house this time. Aggressive intimacy. Seems like they're celebrating something. Celebrating. While her son worked overtime to pay for a project bonus he planned to surprise Kemi with, she was celebrating her betrayal with another man in his own home. Mama Adunni had spent the morning reviewing every piece of evidence one final time, making sure nothing was missing, nothing could be disputed. The legal documents were prepared. The confrontation strategy was planned. The aftermath support systems were in place. Today, the careful construction of lies that had been her daughter-in-law's life would come crashing down. But first, she needed to save her son from the worst kind of blindsiding. "Kemi, sweetheart, would you like to watch cartoons inside? Grandmama needs to make an important phone call." Once Kemi was settled with her favorite Disney movie, Mama Adunni dialed Dayo's number with trembling fingers. The conversation that would change everything was about to begin. "Mama, is everything all right? You sound strange." "My son, I need you to come home right now. There's something happening at your house that you need to see with your own eyes." "What's wrong? Is Kemi okay? Is Kemi hurt?" The genuine concern in his voice nearly broke her resolve. This caring, loving man was about to discover that the woman he'd built his life around was systematically destroying him. "Kemi is fine. She's here with me." As for Kemi, Mama Adunni paused, gathering strength for what came next. "Son, I need you to trust me completely. Leave work right now and meet me at your house in 20 minutes. Don't call ahead. Don't announce yourself. Just come." "Mama, you're scaring me." "What's going on?" 20 minutes, Dayo. "And prepare yourself. What you're about to see will change everything." The drive from Victoria Island to Ikeja felt both endless and too short. Mama Adunni sat in the passenger seat of Dayo's Mercedes, watching her son's profile as he navigated Lagos traffic with unusual recklessness. His jaw was tight, his hands gripping the steering wheel so hard his knuckles were white. He'd tried asking questions, but she'd refused to answer, knowing that some truths were too devastating to hear secondhand. "Whatever it is, Mama, we can fix it," he said as they turned into his estate. "Kemi and I have problems. Yes, but every marriage has problems. Nothing we can't work through." Mama Adunni's heart shattered watching him try to convince himself that his world wasn't about to end. The optimism, the faith, the pure love he had for his wife, all of it was about to be incinerated by reality. They parked outside the house in silence. The familiar two-story building looked peaceful in the afternoon sun, its manicured garden and expensive cars suggesting the prosperity and happiness within. Appearances, Mama Adunni had learned, were the cruelest lies of all. "Why are we sitting here?" Dayo asked. "Let's go inside and talk to Kemi about whatever's bothering you. Because once we walk through that door, your life will never be the same," Mama Adunni replied quietly. "I want you to have one more moment of the life you thought you had." She pulled out her phone and showed him a single photograph, Kemi and Tund embracing by the pool, clearly intimate, clearly in love. Not the desperate passion of a momentary mistake, but the comfortable affection of established lovers. Dayo stared at the image for a full minute without speaking. His breathing became shallow, then rapid, then controlled with obvious effort. When he finally looked up, his eyes held a devastation so complete it looked like death. "How long have you known?" His voice was barely a whisper. 2 weeks. I hired investigators. I have everything, photographs, videos, financial records, timeline of their meetings. This has been going on for at least 6 months, possibly longer. 6 months. He repeated the words like they were in a foreign language. "She's been, while I was working to provide for our family, she's been using your money to pay him." Yes. The financial betrayal seemed to hit him harder than the sexual infidelity. His whole body went rigid, and for a moment Mama Adunni thought he might be sick. "I need to see for myself," he said finally. "Are you sure? Once you see this, you can't unsee it. Once you know the truth, you can't go back to believing in your marriage." "I'm already destroyed, Mama. Now I need to know how completely." They approached the house like mourners walking to a grave. Dayo's spare key felt cold in his trembling hands as he unlocked the front door. The house was silent except for faint sounds drifting from the back, sounds that made his face turn ashen with recognition. They moved through the living room, past family photos showing happy smiles that were now revealed as performances, past furniture Dayo had chosen with love and pride for the woman who was destroying him upstairs. At the pool house door, Dayo stopped. Inside, Kemi's voice was clear and unmistakable. "I love you so much, baby. Promise me we'll always have this, no matter what happens with him." Mama Adunni watched her son's face crumble as he finally completely understood that his marriage had been a lie, his trust had been weaponized against him, and his love had been used to fund his own humiliation. When he reached for the door handle, his hand was steady. The trembling had stopped. In its place was something cold and final that Mama Adunni recognized from her own mirror. The door opened. The moment of truth has arrived. How will Dayo react when he sees his wife with another man? Will he explode with rage or collapse with heartbreak? Don't miss what happens next. This confrontation will change everything. Smash that subscribe button now, because what comes next will blow your mind. The pool house door swung open with a soft creak that seemed to echo like thunder across the compound. Dayo stood silhouetted in the afternoon sunlight, his tall frame filling the doorway as he stared at the scene that would haunt his nightmares forever. His wife Kemi was straddling their cooked tund on the expensive outdoor furniture he'd bought for their anniversary. Both of them naked and glistening with sweat, completely lost in their passion. For a moment that stretched into eternity, nobody moved. The Lagos afternoon heat seemed to intensify, the air becoming thick and oppressive as three lives collided in catastrophic slow motion. Then Kemi's scream shattered the silence. Dayo! The sound was primal, animalistic, like a creature caught in a trap. She scrambled to cover herself with a pool towel, her face cycling through shock, terror, and something that looked almost like relief. Baby, I can explain. Time snapped back to normal speed. Tund launched himself off the lounge chair so violently he crashed into the pool house wall, sending decorative plants and pool equipment scattering across the concrete. He grabbed for his clothes with desperate hands, his eyes wide with the panic of a man who knew his life was over. Explain. Dayo's voice was barely above a whisper, but it carried the weight of a man's world collapsing in real time. Each word was precise, controlled, deadly. Explain what, Kemi? Explain how my wife is fucking our cook? Explain how you're using my money to pay him? Explain how you're destroying our daughter's home while I work 70-hour weeks to give you everything you could possibly want. Mama Adunni watched from just outside the doorway, her heart breaking as she witnessed her son's transformation from loving husband to devastated stranger. She prepared for this moment for weeks, but seeing Dayo's face, the raw betrayal, the complete disillusionment, was more painful than she'd imagined. Dayo, please, you have to listen to me, Kemi begged, clutching the towel to her chest like armor. Her perfectly styled hair was disheveled, her makeup smeared, but it was her eyes that told the real story. They weren't filled with shame or regret. They were calculating, already working on damage control. This isn't what you think. I was confused, lonely, you're never home. Don't. Dayo's voice cut through her excuses like a blade. Don't you dare try to make this my fault. Don't stand there naked with another man and tell me I drove you to this. Tund had managed to pull on his pants, but was still shirtless, his chest heaving with panic. He kept glancing between Dayo and the door, clearly debating whether to run or try to explain. The decision was made for him when Dayo's attention shifted to him with laser focus. You, Dayo said, his voice dropping to a dangerous growl. You ate at my table. I paid your salary. I trusted you in my home, around my wife, around my daughter. And this is how you repay that trust. Oga, please, Tund started, but Dayo cut him off. If you say one word, one single word, I will kill you where you stand. The threat was delivered with such cold certainty that even Mama Adunni felt a chill. This wasn't her gentle son anymore. This was a man pushed beyond his breaking point, discovering capabilities for violence he'd never known he possessed. Tund wisely chose silence, pressing himself against the far wall like he could disappear into the concrete. How long? Dayo asked, turning back to Kemi. How long has this been going on? Kemi's eyes darted to Mama Adunni, then back to her husband. It only started recently, I swear. Just a few weeks. I was so lonely, and you were working so much. 6 months, Mama Adunni said quietly, speaking for the first time since entering the pool house. It's been going on for at least 6 months. Every day when you're at work. Every time you travel for business. Every time you're pulling overtime to pay for her lifestyle, she's here with him. Kemi's face went white. How do you? I know everything, Mama Adunni continued, her voice steady as a judge pronouncing sentence. Every lie you've told. Every dollar you've stolen from the joint account to pay him. Every time you sent our granddaughter away, so you could fornicate in the home my son built for his family. You've been spying on me?" Kemi's shock was genuine, but underneath it, Mama Adunni could see the wheels turning, already trying to figure out how much evidence existed, how much damage had been done. "I've been protecting my son from a snake in his own house," Mama Adunni replied. And now he could see exactly what kind of woman he married. Dayo had been silent during this exchange, his face cycling through emotions too complex to name. When he finally spoke, his voice was different, harder, colder, final. "Pack your things," he told Kemi. "You have 1 hour to take whatever clothes you need and get out of my house. You can't throw me out. This is my home too. What about Timmy? What about our marriage?" "Our marriage?" Dayo laughed, but it was the sound of something breaking apart. "Our marriage ended the first time you brought him into our bed. Our marriage ended when you decided my love wasn't enough and my money was just a tool to fund your betrayal." "Dayo, please, think about this rationally. We could go to counseling. We can work through this. People make mistakes." "Mistakes?" His control finally snapped. 6 months of fucking our cook is not a mistake. Stealing money from our account to pay your lover is not a mistake. Looking me in the eye every night and lying about where you've been, who you've been with, what you've been doing, that's not a mistake. That's a goddamn war campaign. The explosion of rage seemed to drain something out of him. When he spoke again, his voice was exhausted, defeated. "You killed us, Kemi. You took everything we built together and you burned it down for what?" "For him." He gestured at Tund, who was still pressed against the wall like a cornered animal. "Was it worth it? Was destroying our family worth whatever this gave you?" For the first time since being caught, Kemi seemed to understand that this wasn't a fight she could win with tears or excuses or manipulation. The finality in Dayo's voice, the disgust in his eyes, the evidence that his mother had clearly gathered, it was over, and she knew it. But instead of shame or remorse, what crossed her face was something much more dangerous. Something that made Mama Adunni's blood run cold with recognition. Kemi wasn't beaten. She was angry. And angry people do desperate things. Dayo's world has shattered, but this confrontation is far from over. What is Kemi planning now? The look in her eyes promises that this war is just beginning. Don't forget to like and subscribe for the shocking twist coming next. Kemi's about to show exactly how dangerous a cornered woman can be. "I want a divorce." The words dropped into the pool house, silence like stones into still water, creating ripples of shock that seemed to physically move through the air. Kemi had found her clothes, wrapped herself in a defiant dignity, and was now facing her husband with the kind of cold composure that only came from having nothing left to lose. Dayo stared at her, as if she'd spoken in a foreign language. After everything he'd just witnessed, after catching her in the most intimate betrayal possible, she was the one demanding a divorce? "You want a divorce?" he repeated slowly, his voice carrying a dangerous edge. "You destroy our marriage, humiliate me in my own home, steal my money to pay your lover, and now you have the audacity to demand a divorce." "Yes," Kemi replied, straightening her shoulders like a queen addressing her subjects. "Because this marriage has been dead for years, Dayo. We've just been too stubborn or too scared to admit it." Mama Adunni watched in fascination as her daughter-in-law transformed before their eyes. Gone was the caught cheater scrambling for explanations. In her place stood a woman who had clearly been preparing for this moment much longer than anyone realized. "You work 16 hours a day," Kemi continued, her voice gaining strength with each word. "When was the last time we went on a date? When was the last time you made me feel like a woman instead of a live-in nanny and housekeeper? When was the last time you touched me with passion instead of obligation? Are you seriously trying to blame me for your infidelity?" Dayo's disbelief was complete. "I worked those hours to provide for you, to give you the lifestyle you demanded. The Range Rover, the designer clothes, the expensive vacations, the money you sent your family every month. Where do you think all of that came from?" "Blood money," Kemi shot back. "Money earned by a man who chose his career over his family. You think throwing designer bags and jewelry at me makes up for emotional abandonment? You think I should be grateful to live like a widow while my husband is still alive?" The manipulation was masterful, and Mama Adunni could see it working. Doubt flickered across Dayo's face as his wife twisted the narrative, making herself the victim of his success rather than the architect of his betrayal. I made a mistake, yes, Kemi continued, pressing her advantage. But this marriage has been over for years. We're just too stubborn to admit it. I deserve to be happy, and you deserve a wife who can love the man you've become instead of mourning the man you used to be. What about Temi? Dayo's voice cracked as he spoke their daughter's name. What about our little girl? Kemi's expression softened slightly, but Mama Adunni caught the calculation behind her eyes. Temi deserves parents who are happy, not parents who are destroying each other with resentment and disappointment. I'll fight for custody, and honestly, Dayo, I'll probably win. Courts favor mothers, especially when the father works 100-hour weeks and is never home. The threat hit Dayo like a physical blow. Mama Adunni watched her son's shoulders slump as the full scope of what he was facing became clear. Kemi wasn't just leaving him. She was planning to take everything, including his daughter. You calculated this, he whispered, understanding dawning in his eyes. This whole thing, the affair, the timing, even getting caught, you planned all of this. I planned to find happiness, Kemi replied smoothly. If that required some strategic thinking, then yes, I planned it. I'm not going to apologize for refusing to spend the rest of my life in a loveless marriage with a man who sees me as a trophy wife and live-in babysitter. Strategic thinking? Mama Adunni spoke for the first time since Kemi's transformation began, her voice dripping with disgust. Is that what you call stealing money from my son to pay your lover? Strategic thinking? Kemi turned to face her mother-in-law with eyes that had gone completely cold. This is between my husband and me, Mama Adunni. You need to stay out of it. Oh, my dear daughter-in-law. Mama Adunni smiled, pulling out her phone with deliberate slowness. I'm already in it, deep in it, and I've been preparing for this conversation much longer than you realize. She pressed play on a video file. The pool house filled with the sound of Kemi's voice from earlier that day. I love you so much, baby. Promise me we'll always have this, no matter what happens with him. Kemi's face went pale, but she recovered quickly. Recording someone without consent is illegal in Nigeria. Recording someone destroying my son's life in his own home. Mama Adunni laughed. Let's see what the courts think about that. But this is just the beginning. She scrolled through her phone, showing them glimpse after glimpse of documented evidence. 6 months of photographs, video surveillance, financial records showing every naira you stole, phone records showing hundreds of calls and messages to your lover while your husband was at work. You've been stalking me, Kemi accused, but her voice had lost its earlier confidence. I've been documenting the systematic destruction of my son's marriage by a woman who took vows before God and family, then spent months spitting on those promises while enjoying the benefits of his love and generosity. Dayo was staring at his mother's phone with growing amazement. How much evidence do you have? Everything, Mama Adunni replied simply. Every lie, every betrayal, every stolen dollar, every intimate moment she shared with him while you were working to support her lifestyle. Everything a divorce court needs to see exactly what kind of wife and mother she really is. Kemi's composure finally cracked. You can't use that in court. There are laws about privacy, about adultery? Mama Adunni interrupted. About theft of marital funds? About fraud and deception? Yes, there are laws about those things, and you've broken every single one of them. She turned to Tund, who had been silent throughout the exchange, still pressed against the pool house wall like he could disappear if he tried hard enough. And you, she said to him, her voice carrying a promise of destruction. You think this ends with losing your job? You think walking away from this house means walking away from the consequences? Mama, please. Tund finally spoke, his voice shaking. I didn't mean for this to happen. She came to me. She offered me money. I have family to support. You accepted money to sleep with your employer's wife. Mama Adunni cut him off. In our culture, in our law, that makes you not just an adulterer, but a paid prostitute. How do you think that will look to your family, to your community, to any future employer who might consider hiring you? The devastating reality was settling over everyone in the pool house. Kemi had thought she was playing chess, But Mama Adunni had been playing an entirely different game, one with much higher stakes and much more permanent consequences. "What do you want?" Kemi asked quietly, the fight finally going out of her voice. "I want my son to have his daughter, his home, and his dignity," Mama Adunni replied. "I want you to face the full consequences of your choices. And I want everyone in Lagos to understand what happens when you try to destroy my family." Kemi straightened again, and Mama Adunni recognized the look in her eyes. It was the same expression she'd seen in cornered animals, the moment when they realized they were going to die, so they might as well try to take everyone else with them. "You think you've won," Kemi said softly. "You think your evidence and your threats and your self-righteous anger give you power over me. But you're forgetting something important." "What's that?" Mama Adunni asked, though something in her daughter-in-law's tone made her uneasy. "I have weapons too, and mine will destroy all of you." Kemi's desperate gambit could turn this entire situation upside down. What devastating secret is she about to reveal? The real battle is just beginning. Make sure you're subscribed because you won't want to miss the explosive courtroom drama coming next. The Lagos State Family Court building buzzed with an energy that veteran lawyers recognized immediately. The kind of tension that surrounded cases involving money, sex, and revenge. The Adebayo divorce had become the most talked-about proceeding in months, drawing spectators who came to witness what promised to be a spectacular destruction of reputations and lives. 3 weeks had passed since the pool house confrontation, 3 weeks that had transformed all the participants in ways none of them had anticipated. Kemi sat at the plaintiff's table looking like the perfect picture of a wronged woman. Modest dress that emphasized her role as a mother, minimal makeup that suggested vulnerability rather than vanity, and a legal team that had clearly coached her extensively on projecting innocence under pressure. Across the aisle, Dayo looked like a man who had aged years and weeks. The confident petroleum engineer who once commanded respect in corporate boardrooms now carried himself with the cautious movements of someone who no longer trusted the ground beneath his feet. Dark circles under his eyes spoke of sleepless nights, and his expensive suit couldn't quite hide the weight he'd lost to stress and heartbreak. Mama Adunni sat in the gallery behind her son, a folder of evidence thick as a book resting on her lap. She had spent the 3 weeks since the confrontation building an airtight case, but watching Kemi's transformation into the picture of wounded motherhood, she felt the first stirrings of unease. Her daughter-in-law was clearly planning something more sophisticated than simple denial. "Your Honor," Kemi's lawyer, Mrs. Adeli, addressed Judge Akinola with the confidence of someone holding winning cards. "My client comes before this court not as a perfect woman, but as a human being who made a desperate mistake while trapped in a loveless, emotionally abusive marriage." The word abusive rippled through the courtroom like electricity. Dayo's head snapped up, his face cycling through confusion, disbelief, and growing horror as he realized what was happening. "Mrs. Adebayo admits to the affair," Mrs. Adeli continued. "She makes no excuses for her moral failing. But this court needs to understand the context that led to such desperate behavior. Years of emotional neglect, financial control, and psychological manipulation by a husband who treated her more like property than a partner." "Your Honor," Mr. Okafor, Dayo's lawyer, rose immediately. "This is the first time any allegations of abuse have been raised." Mrs. Adebayo never mentioned. Because she was terrified, Mrs. Adeli interrupted smoothly. Terrified a man who controlled every aspect of her life, who monitored her movements, who used his mother as a spy to watch and document her private moments. The very evidence they planned to present proves the level of surveillance and control she was subjected to. Mama Adunni felt her blood pressure spike as Kemi's strategy became clear. By admitting to the affair up front, she was positioning herself as the victim of circumstances beyond her control. The evidence that was supposed to destroy her was being twisted into proof of her oppression. "Your Honor," Mrs. Adeli continued, "Mrs. Adebayo is seeking custody of their 4-year-old daughter not out of vindictiveness, but out of genuine concern for the child's welfare. A father who works 16-hour days, who has turned his own mother into a private investigator, who creates an atmosphere of such fear and control that his wife felt her only escape was through another man. Is this the environment where a young girl should be raised? Judge Akinola, a stern woman in her 50s known for her no-nonsense approach to family law, listened with an expression that revealed nothing. But Mama Adunni could see her taking notes, could see the way her eyes lingered on Kemi's modest appearance and Dayo's obvious distress. Furthermore, Mrs. Adelik said, building to her crescendo, Mrs. Adebayo is seeking her fair share of marital assets, 50% of everything built during their marriage, including the family home. She plans to use these resources to create a stable, loving environment for their daughter, away from the toxic dynamics that drove her to such desperate measures. The courtroom was silent as Mrs. Adelik took her seat, having painted Kemi as a sympathetic figure driven to infidelity by unbearable circumstances. Mama Adunni had to admit it was masterfully done, taking the strongest evidence against her and turning it into proof of her victimization. Mr. Okafor stood to present their case, and Mama Adunni held her breath. Everything they had worked for, all the evidence they had gathered, would live or die in the next few minutes. Your Honor, I'd like to begin by showing the court what Mrs. Adebayo calls desperate measures and what we call calculated fraud. The overhead screen came to life with the first photograph, Kemi and Tund in the pool house, clearly comfortable and familiar with each other. But instead of looking shocked or disgusted, Judge Akinola studied the image with clinical detachment. This affair was not a moment of weakness or a cry for help, Mr. Okafor explained. These images spanned 6 months, showing systematic betrayal conducted in the family home while the husband worked to support them both. But the sexual infidelity is only part of the story. Bank statements appeared on the screen, highlighted transactions showing the pattern of cash withdrawals. Mrs. Adebayo was stealing money from their joint account, money her husband earned through 16-hour workdays, to pay her lover for sexual services. This wasn't emotional desperation, Your Honor. This was financial fraud. Gasps rippled through the courtroom, but Mama Adunni noticed that Judge Akinola's expression hadn't changed. The evidence that seemed so damning to them was being received with professional neutrality. But perhaps most damaging, Mr. Okafor continued, is this audio recording captured in the family home during one of their encounters. Kemi's voice filled the courtroom. Dayo never makes me feel like this. Promise me you'll never tell Dayo about us, baby. This has to stay our secret forever. The words hung in the air like accusations. This wasn't the voice of a desperate woman seeking escape. This was the voice of someone enjoying her deception, reveling in her betrayal of the man who trusted her. Your Honor, Mr. Okafor said quietly, this is not the behavior of an abused woman seeking refuge. This is the behavior of someone who found pleasure in destroying her husband's trust while enjoying the benefits of his love and financial support. But even as he spoke, Mama Adunni could see that something was wrong. Judge Akinola was listening, but her body language suggested she was waiting for something else. And Kemi, despite the devastating evidence being presented against her, looked far too calm. Your Honor, Mrs. Adelik rose again. Before you make any decisions based on this surveillance evidence, there's something else the court needs to know. Something that will explain everything my client has endured. She nodded to Kemi, who stood with the trembling dignity of someone about to reveal a terrible secret. I have evidence, Kemi said, her voice shaking but determined, that my husband has been physically abusing me for months. I was too ashamed to report it, too afraid of what he might do if I spoke out. But I can't stay silent anymore. She pulled out her phone, showing photographs of bruised arms, a black eye, marks on her neck that looked like fingerprints. The courtroom erupted in shocked murmurs. Dayo shot to his feet, his face white with disbelief and terror. That's a lie, he shouted. Your Honor, I have never laid a hand on my wife. Those photos are fake. But Judge Akinola was studying the images with the serious attention they demanded. Domestic violence accusations changed everything. They could destroy Dayo's custody chances, his career, his entire future. Mrs. Adebayo, Judge Akinola said carefully, "These are serious allegations. Do you have any witnesses to these incidents?" Kemi hesitated for just a moment, but Mama Adunni caught it. It was the pause of someone whose lies were finally catching up to them. "The housemaid, Blessing, witnessed some of the violence," Kemi said. "But my husband fired her last month, probably because he was afraid she would testify against him." It was a perfect answer, impossible to verify, plausible enough to explain the lack of corroborating witnesses. Mama Adunni watched her son's world prepare to collapse again, this time under the weight of accusations that could destroy him completely. But as she stared at Kemi's performance, something nagged at the back of her mind. Something about timing, about preparation, about the way her daughter-in-law had been ready for every contingency except. Mama Adunni smiled for the first time since entering the courtroom. Kemi had made one crucial mistake, and Mama Adunni had the evidence to prove it. Kemi's desperate gambit with fake domestic violence accusations might just work. These photos look convincing, and her story is believable. But Mama Adunni has been playing this game longer than anyone realizes. The final twist that will either save or destroy the Adebayo family is coming next. Don't miss the explosive conclusion. Make sure you're subscribed. Your Honor, I request a brief recess, Mr. Okafor announced, his voice steady despite the chaos Kemi's accusations had just unleashed. Mrs. Adebayo's mother-in-law has crucial evidence regarding these domestic violence allegations that the court needs to review before proceeding. Judge Akinola checked her watch, her expression grave. Domestic violence accusations were never taken lightly in her courtroom, but something about the timing and presentation of these photos felt orchestrated. 15 minutes, she declared, banging her gavel. In the hallway outside the courtroom, Mama Adunni moved with the precision of a general executing a battle plan she had been refining for weeks. Her hands were steady as she pulled out her phone, scrolling through hours of saved footage with the confidence of someone who had anticipated this exact moment. "I knew she would try something like this," she whispered to Mr. Okafor and Dayo, who was still reeling from the false accusations that could destroy his life. "That's why I didn't just have her followed. I had every inch of my son's house monitored." "What do you mean?" Mr. Okafor asked, though hope was beginning to flicker in his eyes. "Security cameras, hidden in smoke detectors throughout the house. Motion activated, high definition, with audio recording. I had them installed 2 months ago when I first suspected something was wrong. My son doesn't even know about them." Dayo stared at his mother with amazement. "You bugged my entire house. I protected my son's home from a woman I suspected was planning to destroy him," Mama Adunni corrected. "And judging by what just happened in there, my instincts were completely correct." She found the video file she was looking for and held the phone so both men could see. "This was recorded 3 days ago in your master bedroom. Watch carefully." The footage showed Kemi alone in the bedroom, sitting at her vanity mirror with an array of makeup products spread before her. But these weren't normal cosmetics. They were theatrical makeup supplies, the kind used by actors to create realistic injuries and bruises. On the screen, they watched Kemi methodically apply dark makeup to her arms, blending and shading with expert precision to create bruises that looked devastatingly real. She worked with the focus of an artist, occasionally checking reference photos on her phone to ensure the injuries looked authentic. She practiced this. Mr. Okafor breathed, watching Kemi create the black eye that had shocked the courtroom minutes earlier. This wasn't a desperate decision. This was planned, rehearsed, perfected. "There's more," Mama Adunni said, switching to an audio file. "This is from a phone conversation she had yesterday with someone named Funmi. Listen carefully." Kemi's voice filled the quiet hallway. "The photos came out perfectly. No one will be able to tell they're fake, especially not some judge who sees dozens of real abuse cases every month. Dayo won't know what hit him." The female voice on the other end responded. "Are you sure about this, Kemi? False accusations like this can backfire badly if you're caught." "I won't be caught," Kemi's voice replied with chilling confidence. "I've planned every detail. The makeup artists I hired taught me how to make it look completely authentic. The timeline matches perfectly with his work schedule. And the best part? I fired the housemaid before any of this started, So there are no witnesses to contradict my story. What about his mother? She seems suspicious. That old woman can suspect whatever she wants. By the time I'm finished, Dayo will lose custody of Temi, lose half his assets, and be facing criminal charges for domestic violence. He'll be so destroyed he won't be able to fight me on anything. The conversation continued, revealing the depth of Kemi's planning and her complete lack of remorse for the lives she was willing to destroy. She discussed coaching sessions with a lawyer who specialized in domestic violence cases, research into which judges were most sympathetic to abused women, even contingency plans if her first strategy failed. She's been planning this for months, Dayo said, his voice hollow with disbelief. While I was working to support our family, while I was trying to save our marriage, she was planning my complete destruction. The domestic violence accusations were always her nuclear option, Mama Adunni explained. If the adultery evidence came out, she would paint herself as an abused woman driven to desperate measures. If that didn't work, she had backup plans involving financial fraud allegations, even claims that you were an unfit father due to work addiction. Mr. Okafor was already making notes, his legal mind cataloging the evidence and its implications. This changes everything. Not only can we prove the domestic violence allegations are completely fabricated, but we have evidence of premeditated fraud, perjury, and conspiracy to commit perjury. What about criminal charges? Dayo asked. False reporting of domestic violence is a criminal offense in Lagos State, Mr. Okafor confirmed. The penalties include fines, imprisonment, and permanent criminal record. But there's more: conspiracy to defraud, perjury in family court, theft of marital funds. She's looking at serious jail time. As they prepared to return to the courtroom, Mama Adunni felt the weight of what they were about to do. In the next few minutes, they would not only clear Dayo's name, but destroy Kemi so completely that she would never recover. The woman who had once been welcomed into their family would leave the courtroom in handcuffs. "Are you ready for this, my son?" she asked Dayo quietly. He looked at his mother with an expression she had never seen before, a mixture of gratitude, admiration, and something that looked like awe. "You saved my life, Mama. You saved Temi's future. I don't know how I can ever repay you." "You don't repay a mother's love," she replied simply. "You just promise me you'll choose better next time." Back in the courtroom, the tension was palpable. Kemi sat at her table looking like a woman who believed she had just delivered a killing blow. Her lawyer, Mrs. Adelik, was conferring with her in whispered tones, probably discussing their next moves now that they believed they had Dayo on the defensive. Judge Akinola returned to her bench with the serious expression of someone preparing to make decisions that would alter lives forever. Domestic violence cases required careful consideration, thorough investigation, and absolute commitment to protecting victims while ensuring justice for the accused. "Mr. Okafor," she said, "you requested this recess to present additional evidence regarding Mrs. Adebayo's allegations. I'm prepared to hear what you have to say." "Thank you, Your Honor. What I'm about to show the court will demonstrate that Mrs. Adebayo's domestic violence allegations are not only false, but were fabricated as part of a calculated campaign to defraud my client and pervert the course of justice." The overhead screen came to life again, but this time it showed security camera footage from inside the Adebayo home. The timestamp read 3 days earlier, well after Kemi claimed the abuse had occurred, but clearly showing her alone in her bedroom, creating fake injuries with theatrical makeup. The courtroom watched in stunned silence as Kemi methodically applied bruises to her arms, created a black eye with expert precision, and even photographed her work from multiple angles to ensure the injuries looked authentic from every perspective. This footage was captured by hidden security cameras throughout the defendant's home, Mr. Okafor explained. As you can see, Mrs. Adebayo was not the victim of domestic violence. She was the architect of an elaborate fraud designed to destroy her husband's reputation and gain advantage in these proceedings. Gasps and murmurs rippled through the courtroom, but Judge Akinola was focused on Kemi, whose face had gone completely white. The confident woman who had just portrayed herself as a battered wife was now exposed as a calculating manipulator willing to weaponize society's sympathy for actual abuse victims. But perhaps most damning, Mr. Okafor continued. Is this recorded phone conversation from yesterday, where Mrs. Adebayo discusses her fraud with an accomplice? Kemi's voice filled the courtroom again, but this time her words carried very different meaning. The photos came out perfectly. No one will be able to tell they're fake. By the time I'm finished, Dayo will lose custody of Kemi, lose half his assets, and be facing criminal charges for domestic violence. The silence that followed was deafening. Every person in the courtroom, lawyers, spectators, court officials, stared at Kemi with expressions ranging from disgust to disbelief. She had not only committed fraud, but had done so while mocking the very real suffering of actual domestic violence victims. Judge Akinola's voice, when she finally spoke, was ice cold. Mrs. Adebayo, can you explain to this court why security footage shows you applying makeup to create fake bruises 3 days ago? Kemi's mouth opened and closed soundlessly. Her lawyer looked like she wanted to crawl under the table and disappear forever. And can you explain this recorded phone conversation where you discuss manufacturing domestic violence allegations as part of a deliberate strategy to defraud your husband? Your Honor, I can explain, Kemi started, but Judge Akinola cut her off. You've explained enough, the judge said with disgust. In 30 years on this bench, I have rarely seen such calculated deception, such callous disregard for the real victims of domestic violence, such systematic fraud perpetrated against both this court and an innocent man. She turned to the bailiff. Officer, please contact the Lagos State Police. I want Mrs. Adebayo arrested on charges of perjury, fraud, false reporting of domestic violence, and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. Kemi's web of lies is finally unraveling, but the judge's final decision will determine everything. Will justice truly prevail, or does Kemi have one last desperate card to play? The explosive conclusion that will determine the fate of the Adebayo family is coming next. Don't miss it. The sound of handcuffs clicking shut echoed through the Lagos family court like the closing of a coffin lid. Kemi Adebayo, who had walked into the building that morning believing she was about to claim victory in the most important battle of her life, now sat in the defendant's chair with her wrists bound behind her back, her carefully constructed world crumbling around her in real time. Mrs. Kemi Adebayo, Judge Akinola's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. This court finds you guilty of systematic perjury, fraud, false reporting of domestic violence, theft of marital funds, and conspiracy to pervert the course of justice. These are not the actions of a desperate woman seeking refuge from abuse. These are the calculated crimes of someone willing to destroy innocent lives for personal gain. The courtroom was dead silent. Every spectator holding their breath as justice was delivered with surgical precision. Even the court reporters had stopped typing, caught up in the drama of watching someone's life completely disintegrate in public. Dayo sat at his lawyer's table looking like a man who had just been pulled back from the edge of a cliff. The relief on his face was so profound it was almost painful to witness. For weeks, he had lived with the knowledge that his wife had betrayed him, but the false domestic violence accusations had threatened to destroy not just his marriage, but his career, his reputation, his relationship with his daughter, everything that gave his life meaning. Mama Adunni watched from the gallery with the satisfied expression of a general whose battle plan had executed flawlessly. Every move Kemi had made, every lie she had told, every manipulation she had attempted, all of it had been anticipated and countered. But there was no joy in her victory, only the grim satisfaction of necessary justice being served. Mr. Dayo Adebayo, Judge Akinola continued, this court grants you full custody of your minor daughter, Kemi Adebayo. Mrs. Adebayo will be permitted supervised visitation rights only after completion of a comprehensive psychological evaluation and anger management program, and only if she is not serving a prison sentence at the time. The custody decision hit Kemi like a physical blow. Whatever composure she had managed to maintain shattered completely as she realized she was losing not just her husband and her freedom, but her daughter as well. Your Honor, please, she begged, her voice breaking with genuine desperation for the first time since the proceedings began. She's my baby. She needs her mother. I made mistakes, yes, but but I love her. Please don't take her away from me. You should have considered your daughter's welfare before embarking on a campaign of fraud and deception that could have sent her father to prison. Judge Akinola replied coldly. Your actions demonstrate a complete disregard for this child's emotional and psychological well-being. But the judge wasn't finished delivering consequences. Furthermore, due to Mrs. Adebayo's systematic fraud, theft of marital funds, and false accusations designed to manipulate these proceedings, she forfeits all claims to marital property. Mr. Adebayo will retain full ownership of the family home, all vehicles, bank accounts, and investments acquired during the marriage. The financial devastation was complete. Kemi had gambled everything on her ability to manipulate the system, and now she was left with nothing. No husband, no child, no home, no money, and a criminal record that would follow her for the rest of her life. The defendant will remain in custody pending sentencing, Judge Akinola declared. Given the serious nature of these crimes and the defendant's clear willingness to commit perjury under oath, bail is denied. The gavel came down with the finality of a gunshot. Kemi Adebayo, who had entered the courtroom as a plaintiff seeking divorce and custody, was now a convicted criminal facing years in prison. As the bailiffs prepared to escort Kemi from the courtroom, she turned one last time to look at her family. Her eyes found Mama Adunni first, and the hatred in her gaze was so intense it felt like a physical force. This isn't over, she mouthed silently, her lips forming words that carried the promise of future violence. But Mama Adunni just smiled and mouthed back, yes it is. Then Kemi was gone, led away in handcuffs to begin a journey that would take her to Kirikiri prison, in a future she had never imagined possible when she first decided to betray her husband's trust. Outside the courthouse, Lagos afternoon heat felt different somehow. Cleaner, lighter, free of the toxic atmosphere that had surrounded the Adebayo family for months. Dayo stood on the courthouse steps with his legal team, still processing the magnitude of what had just occurred. What happens now? He asked Mr. Okafor. Now you rebuild your life? The lawyer replied. The criminal charges against her will proceed separately from the family court case. She's looking at a minimum of 2 years in prison, possibly more, depending on how the prosecutor decides to handle the conspiracy charges. And Temi, she's yours completely. Kemi will have no unsupervised contact with her until she completes psychological evaluation and serves whatever sentence she receives. Even then, any visitation will be at the court's discretion and your approval. Mama Adunni approached her son, and for a moment they just stood looking at each other, a mother and her child who had survived a war that could have destroyed them both. I'm sorry I had to put you through this, she said quietly. I'm sorry you had to learn the truth about the woman you loved in such a public, painful way. Don't apologize, Mama, Dayo replied, pulling his mother into an embrace that felt like coming home after a long, difficult journey. You saved my life. You saved Temi's future. You protected our family when I was too blind to see the danger we were in. What will you tell Temi about her mother? Mama Adunni asked, because this was the question that had haunted her throughout the entire ordeal. I'll tell her that sometimes people make very bad choices, and those choices have consequences, Dayo replied. When she's older, when she can understand, I'll tell her the whole truth. But for now, I'll just love her enough for both parents and make sure she knows she's safe. As they walked to their cars, Mama Adunni felt the weight of the past few months beginning to lift from her shoulders. The evidence folders, the surveillance reports, the legal documents, all of it could be filed away now. The war was over, and her family had survived intact. But revenge, she had learned, was a dish that left a bitter taste even when served perfectly. Kemi's destruction had been necessary, justified, and complete, but it had also torn apart a family, traumatized a child, and left scars that would take years to heal. 3 hours later, as news of the arrest spread through Lagos social media and WhatsApp groups, Kemi was being processed into Kirikiri prison. The woman who had once lived in luxury in Ikeja, driving a Range Rover and wearing designer clothes, was now wearing prison uniform and sharing a cell with women who had committed similar crimes of betrayal and fraud. Her phone had been confiscated, her designer jewelry removed, her freedom stripped away as completely as she had tried to strip away her husband's dignity. The future she had planned, living comfortably on Dayo's money while enjoying her lover's attention, had been replaced by the harsh reality of prison walls and the knowledge that her own greed and cruelty had destroyed everything she had ever claimed to love. Justice has been served in the most spectacular way possible, but this story isn't over yet. What happened to Tund, the cook who started this whole mess? And how will the Adebayo family rebuild from the ashes of this betrayal? The final chapter reveals all. Make sure you're subscribed, because you won't believe how this epic revenge saga ends. 6 months after the trial that had shocked Lagos society, the Adebayo compound felt like a completely different place. The oppressive atmosphere of lies and betrayal had been replaced by something lighter. Not happiness exactly, because the wounds were still too fresh, but peace. The kind of peace that comes after a storm has passed, and the survivors can finally assess the damage and begin rebuilding. Dayo stood in his renovated kitchen, watching his daughter Kemi play in the garden through the large windows. The 4-year-old was laughing as she chased butterflies, her joy innocent and pure despite everything she had lost. Child psychologists had assured him that she was resilient, that with proper love and support, she would grow up without being permanently damaged by her mother's choices. "She's beautiful," Mama Adunni said, joining her son at the window. "She has your strength and your grandmother's eyes. I pray she never has her mother's heart," Dayo replied quietly. It was the closest he ever came to discussing Kemi these days. The wound was still too raw, the betrayal too complete for him to process it fully. The past 6 months had been a masterclass in justice delivered with precision. Kemi had been sentenced to 2 years in Kirikiri prison for fraud, perjury, and false reporting of domestic violence. The judge had been particularly harsh because of the elaborate nature of her deception and the potential damage to actual domestic violence victims who might not be believed because of cases like hers. But Mama Adunni's revenge had extended far beyond the courtroom. She had made sure that Kemi's story spread through every social circle that mattered in Lagos, the wealthy wise associations, the church groups, the professional women's networks. Kemi's name had become synonymous with betrayal and fraud. Even when she was eventually released from prison, she would find that her reputation had been so thoroughly destroyed that rebuilding any kind of respectable life would be nearly impossible. Tund, the cook who had started the entire catastrophe, had simply vanished. Mama Adunni had made certain that his story spread through Lagos's domestic worker networks, complete with photos and details of his role in the affair. No respectable family would ever hire him again. Last she had heard, he was working day labor jobs in the suburbs, his relationship with his girlfriend Funmi having ended when she discovered he had been lying about his wealthy benefactor. But the most satisfying aspect of Mama Adunni's revenge was how completely it had protected her son and granddaughter. The evidence had been so overwhelming, the prosecution so thorough, that there was no possibility of Kemi ever successfully appealing or finding ways to continue her manipulation from prison. "I got a letter from her lawyer yesterday," Dayo mentioned casually, though Mama Adunni could hear the tension in his voice. "What did she want?" "Visitation rights with Kemi. She's trying to argue that she's completed anger management classes in prison and should be allowed supervised visits." Mama Adunni felt the old familiar rage stir in her chest. Even from prison, Kemi was still trying to find ways to cause pain, still trying to insert herself into the life she had forfeited through her own choices. "What did you tell the lawyer?" "That I'll consider it when Kemi is old enough to decide for herself whether she wants to see her mother. Until then, my daughter's emotional well-being comes first." It was the right decision, and Mama Adunni was proud of how her son had grown through this ordeal. The betrayal that could have destroyed him had instead made him stronger, more discerning, more protective of what truly mattered. The doorbell rang, interrupting their conversation. Dayo's new housekeeper, Mrs. Benson, a grandmother recommended by 3 different church pastors, announced that he had a visitor. "It's a young lady, sir. Says her name is Adunk and that you work together at Shell." Mama Adunni watched her son's face change subtly. She had heard about Adunk, a petroleum geologist who had joined Dayo's project team 3 months ago. According to the family grapevine, she was intelligent, kind, and had been very supportive during the difficult period following the trial. "Tell her I'll be right there," Dayo said, but he paused to check his appearance in the kitchen mirror first. "She's pretty," Mama Adunni observed with the subtle knowing of mothers everywhere. "She's a colleague," Dayo replied, but his tone suggested more. "Good. It's time you started living again instead of just surviving." As Dayo went to greet his guest, Mama Adunni returned to watching her granddaughter play in the garden. The child was singing a song she had learned at school, her voice carrying across the compound with the pure joy that only children possess. The phone rang, interrupting her peaceful moment. The caller ID showed a number she recognized but hadn't expected to see. Kemi's sister, Funk. "Mama Adunni." The voice on the other end was hesitant, ashamed. "I know you probably don't want to hear from me, but I needed to call." "What do you want, Funk?" "I wanted to apologize for what my sister did to your family. And I wanted you to know that our parents have disowned her. When we found out what she did, how she betrayed Dayo and tried to destroy him with lies, we couldn't support that. Our family name has been shamed enough." Mama Adunni felt a moment of satisfaction. In Yoruba culture, family dishonor was one of the worst fates that could befall someone. Kemi hadn't just lost her husband and daughter. She had lost her entire family support system. "She brought this on herself," Mama Adunni replied. "Actions have consequences." "I know. I wanted you to know that not everyone in our family supported what she did. When she gets out of prison, she won't have anywhere to go. We won't take her in." After hanging up, Mama Adunni reflected on how completely Kemi's world had collapsed. Prison, poverty, family rejection, social exile. It was more thorough than even she had planned. But it was also exactly what Kemi had earned through her choices. Later that evening, as the family gathered for dinner, Dayo, Timmy, and Mama Adunni, with the Dunks staying as their guest, the conversation turned to the future. There was talk of Timmy starting proper school, of Dayo taking a promotion that would require less travel, of Mama Adunni maybe retiring from the textile business to spend more time with her granddaughter. "Grandmama," Timmy asked during dessert, "why doesn't Mama come to see me anymore?" The question they had all been dreading finally came, delivered with the innocent directness that only children possess. Dayo and Mama Adunni exchanged glances across the table. "Sometimes, sweetheart," Dayo said carefully, "adults make very bad choices that hurt the people they love. When that happens, there are consequences, serious consequences that can't be taken back." "Did Mama make bad choices?" "Yes, baby. Very bad choices that hurt a lot of people." "Will she say she's sorry?" Mama Adunni watched her son struggle with how to explain to a 4-year-old that some people never truly repent, that some apologies are just more manipulation, that some damage can never be repaired. "Maybe someday," he said finally. "But right now, what matters is that you're safe and loved and surrounded by people who will always protect you." Timmy seemed satisfied with this answer, returning to her ice cream with the resilience that had carried her through the past difficult months. As the evening wound down and Adunk prepared to leave, Mama Adunni pulled her aside for a quiet conversation. "My son has been through a terrible betrayal," she said simply. "If you care about him, really care about him, then you need to understand that trust will not come easily for him now." "I understand," Adunk replied. "I've seen how the divorce affected him. I'm not looking for anything serious, just friendship, maybe companionship. He's a good man who deserves better than what he got." "Yes, he does," Mama Adunni agreed. "And if you hurt him the way she did, you'll discover what happens to people who try to destroy my family." The threat was delivered with a smile, but Adunk was smart enough to understand its seriousness. She nodded respectfully and left with appropriate promises to treat Dayo with the honor he deserved. That night, as Mama Adunni prepared for bed in her own home, she reflected on the events of the past year. The phone call that had started everything, Kemi dropping Timmy off for special time with Dayo, seemed like a lifetime ago. So much had been destroyed, but from the ashes, something stronger had emerged. Her son was free from a toxic marriage and had full custody of his daughter. His career was thriving, his reputation was intact, and he was beginning to open his heart to the possibility of real love with someone who deserved it. Kemi was exactly where she belonged, behind bars, facing the full consequences of her choices, with no family support and no future prospects worth mentioning. And most importantly, little Timmy was safe, loved, and growing up in an environment of honesty and genuine affection instead of lies and manipulation. The phone rang one final time. This call was from her cousin Bola, the private investigator who had helped gather the evidence that brought Kemi down. Adunni, I just wanted to let you know, word is spreading about what happened with the Adebayo case. I've gotten 6 calls this week from other women who suspect their daughters-in-law are cheating or stealing or planning something similar. They all want the Mama Adunni treatment. The what? That's what they're calling it. The Mama Adunni treatment, complete investigation, airtight evidence, total destruction of the person who dares to betray their family. You've become something of a legend among protective mothers in Lagos. Mama Adunni smiled. She had fought this war to protect her son and granddaughter. But if her victory inspired other mothers to protect their families from similar betrayals, then perhaps some good could come from all the pain. Tell them to call me, she said. Family is everything, and anyone who tries to destroy a family deserves whatever consequences come their way. As she hung up the phone and turned off the lights, Mama Adunni felt the deep satisfaction of a woman who had fought for what mattered most and emerged victorious. Kemi had thought she was clever, carrying on her affair while her husband worked to support their lavish lifestyle. She had thought she was safe, protected by social expectations and legal loopholes. She had been wrong about everything, and now she would spend the next 2 years learning exactly how wrong, one day at a time, in a prison cell that was the perfect symbol of the cage she had built for herself through her own choices. Justice, Mama Adunni had learned, was indeed a dish best served cold, and she had served it at exactly the right temperature. The morning sun streamed through the windows of the renovated Adebayo home as Mama Adunni sat in her favorite chair, reading the newspaper and sipping her tea. The headlines spoke of politics, economics, and social issues, but none of it touched the peaceful bubble that now surrounded her family. A year had passed since Kemi's sentencing, and the transformation was complete. Dayo had been promoted to senior project manager at Shell, a position that offered better work-life balance and allowed him to be present for his daughter's daily life. Kemi, now 5, was thriving in her new school and had stopped asking about her mother altogether. Most surprisingly, Dayo and Adunni had quietly begun dating. The relationship was careful, respectful, and built on genuine friendship rather than passion or convenience. Adunni understood the scars that Kemi had left and was patient with Dayo's hesitation to fully trust again. More importantly, she adored Kemi and treated the little girl with a kind of authentic affection that couldn't be faked. "Grandmama, look what Miss Adunni taught me." Kemi burst through the front door, her school bag bouncing as she ran to show off a drawing sheet made during their afternoon art session. "It's beautiful, my angel," Mama Adunni said, examining the colorful picture of their family, Daddy, Grandmama, Kemi, and notably, Miss Adunni all holding hands under a bright yellow sun. "She said maybe she could be my new mama someday," Kemi announced with the casual directness of childhood. "Would you like that, Grandmama?" "I would like whatever makes you and your father happy," Mama Adunni replied carefully, though privately she was pleased. Adunni had proven herself over months of patient courtship, showing none of the red flags that should have warned them about Kemi. That evening, as had become their routine, the extended family gathered for dinner. Dayo cooked, a skill he developed during his bachelor months, while Adunni helped Kemi with homework and Mama Adunni supervised everything with the satisfaction of a general watching a well-executed battle plan. "I have news," Dayo announced as they sat down to eat. "The company is sending me to Houston for 6 months to oversee the new partnership with ExxonMobil. It's a huge opportunity, but you're worried about leaving Kemi," Adunni finished gently. "I can't be away from her for 6 months. Not after everything we've been through." "Then don't go alone," Mama Adunni said simply. "Take your family with you." The suggestion hung in the air like a challenge. Taking Kemi to America for 6 months would require careful planning, legal documentation, and most importantly, it would mean asking Adunni to make a commitment that went far beyond casual dating. "I would love to see America," Adunni said quietly. and Kemi could attend an American school for a semester. It would be an incredible experience for her. What about your job at Shell Lagos? Dayo asked. I've been offered a transfer to Shell Houston, she admitted with a shy smile. I was going to tell you tonight. They want me on the same project you're managing. The pieces were falling into place with the kind of perfect timing that Mama Adunni recognized as divine intervention. Her son was getting a second chance at love, her granddaughter would see the world, and the toxic influence of Kemi would be literally an ocean away. But before anyone could make decisions about the future, the phone rang with a call that brought the past crashing back into their peaceful present. Mrs. Adunni, the voice belonged to a Lagos State prison official. I'm calling to inform you that inmate Kemi Adebayo was involved in a serious altercation today. She's been hospitalized with severe injuries. The room went silent as Mama Adunni put the call on speaker. Dayo's face went pale, not with concern for his ex-wife, but with the fear that somehow, even from prison, Kemi would find a way to disrupt their rebuilt life. What kind of altercation? Mama Adunni asked. She was attacked by 3 other inmates. Apparently, she'd been running some kind of fraud scheme inside the prison, promising to help other inmates with their legal appeals in exchange for money and favors. When the scheme collapsed, the women she'd cheated didn't take it well. Even in prison, Kemi couldn't resist manipulating and deceiving people. Even surrounded by criminals, she had tried to establish herself as the smartest person in the room, and it had backfired spectacularly. Is she expected to recover? Dayo asked, his voice carefully neutral. Eventually, but she'll be in the prison hospital for weeks, and when she recovers, she'll likely face additional charges for the fraud scheme. Her sentence could be extended significantly. After hanging up, the family sat in contemplative silence. The woman who had once controlled their lives with her lies and manipulation was now just another cautionary tale about the consequences of choosing deception over honesty. I feel sorry for her, Kemi said unexpectedly. Mama was very pretty. Why did she choose to be mean instead of nice? It was a profound question from a 5-year-old, and none of the adults had a good answer. Sometimes people make bad choices because they think they're smarter than everyone else, Dayo said finally. They think they can lie and cheat and manipulate without consequences. But life has a way of teaching those people that they're wrong. Is that why she can't come see me? That's part of it, yes. Kemi nodded solemnly, then brightened. Can Miss Adunni come to America with us? The question shifted the conversation back to the future, where it belonged. Over the next hour, they planned tentatively for the Houston assignment. Visas would need to be arranged, schools researched, living arrangements made. But for the first time since the nightmare began, they were planning as a family unit that felt whole and healthy. As the evening wound down and Adunni prepared to leave, she pulled Mama Adunni aside for a private conversation. I want you to know that I understand what you did to protect your family, she said quietly. Some people might think you went too far, but I think you did exactly what any good mother would do. Do you think I'm too ruthless? Mama Adunni asked, genuinely curious about this woman's opinion. I think you're effective, Adunni replied with a smile. And I think anyone who tries to hurt the people you love learns very quickly why that's a mistake. Good. Then you understand the expectations. Understand that earning your trust will be the most important thing I ever do. And I understand that if I ever betray that trust, I'll face consequences that make Kemi's situation look like a vacation. Mama Adunni laughed, genuinely delighted by this woman's directness and intelligence. I think you'll do just fine in our family. Later that night, as Mama Adunni prepared for bed in her quiet house, she reflected on how completely their world had changed. A year ago, they had been living with a cancer in their family, a woman whose lies and betrayals were slowly destroying everything they had built together. Now, that cancer had been surgically removed with precision and finality. Kemi was exactly where she belonged, in prison, facing additional charges, abandoned by her own family, and learning daily that actions have consequences that compound over time. Meanwhile, her son was rebuilding his life with a woman who understood the value of honesty and commitment. Her granddaughter was thriving in an environment of genuine love and stability. And their family was about to embark on an adventure that would take them literally and figuratively as far away from Kemi's toxic influence as possible. The phone rang one last time. This caller was another mother from Victoria Island, sobbing as she described discovering her son's wife stealing money and having an affair with their driver. "Please, Mama Adunni," the woman begged. "I've heard what you did for your family. Can you help me protect mine?" Mama Adunni smiled as she reached for a notepad. "Tell me everything, my dear. Let's see what we can do about this situation." As she began taking notes, planning another campaign of strategic justice, Mama Adunni felt the deep satisfaction of a woman who had found her true calling. Kemi had thought she was destroying the Adebayo family when she chose betrayal over loyalty. Instead, she had awakened something powerful and relentless, a mother's love weaponized into perfect, devastating justice. And across Lagos, other cheating spouses and manipulative family members were about to learn what happened when you underestimated the determination of a Nigerian mother protecting her children. Some lessons Mama Adunni had learned needed to be taught more than once. And she was exactly the right teacher for the job. Justice was served, family was protected, and the guilty received exactly what they deserved. But Mama Adunni's work is far from finished. Her reputation as the mother-in-law who delivers ice-cold justice has spread across Lagos, and her phone won't stop ringing with other families desperate for help. What other shocking stories of betrayal and revenge are waiting to be told? This epic saga might be over, but the legend of Mama Adunni is just beginning. Subscribe now and smash that notification bell. You won't want to miss our next explosive tale of cheating spouses getting exactly what they deserve. Drop a comment telling us if you think Kemi got the justice she earned, and share this story with anyone who believes that family betrayal should never go unpunished. More shocking family drama is coming your way, and trust me, when other cheating wives try to mess with Nigerian mothers who refuse to play games with their children's happiness, the results will blow your mind. #Mother-in-law's shocking discovery. A tale of betrayal and revenge.